Hi everybody, welcome back to my video series on networking. In this particular video, we're going to be taking a look at network types, the different type of networks that exist, classifying them based on where they're working at. In this particular video, we're going to be taking a look at the different type of networks that exist, and by the end of this video, you should be able to look at a network and be able to classify a particular network as either a personal area network, a local area network, a metropolitan area network, the two different type of WANs that you have, wide area networks, private as well as the public. So let's get started with the first type of network that we have, which is a personal area network. This is the network that exists within our homes. This is the network that allows us the ability to connect to each other from maybe your laptop to your desktop to your smartphones, your tablets, to your printers inside the house, inside your network, inside your home, to maybe to the internet. So for example, over here, I'm showing you all these devices are connected to this access point. The access point in turn might probably be connected to the ISP, allowing all the different devices connected to this access point to access the internet. This type of network that is running within your homes is generally referred to as the personal area network. Now, one of the things that's also coming up and it's really catching fire is this concept of Internet of Things within your home. You also now have the ability to connect your appliances using IP and wireless to the internet, so you can control them through apps. Alexa is an example of that. Smart home from Google Home is another example of that, where you have your ACs, your TVs all connected through Wi-Fi in this personal area network, in the home network. All right, so that's your first type of network that you have that is running within your home. Although it's the smallest type of network that you have, it's not the oldest. The oldest type of network that you really have, the one that started the whole thing, is your local area network. This type of network is the one that you run within your organization generally. So this type of network basically is running within your organization, your company, maybe connecting different devices on one floor to another floor, maybe from one building to the other building. Now, one of the things that I want you guys to also be aware of over here is the introduction of this new device that we haven't talked about so far. And that device is known as the router. This device over here. This is again a iconic depiction of a router in a stencil. What it looks like in real life, I'll show you that picture as we go through the course. The function of a router is to connect two different small networks to each other, or connect networks to each other. For example, in my local area network, I have different small networks that exist over here. This is my sales department over here, which is connected using a switch to each other. So this switch over here connects the different devices, whether they're PCs, your printers, your desktops, to each other on the same network. That's a function of a switch. Now on the second floor, or the other floor, floor 1 over here in the same building, I have another switch over here which is responsible for connecting the printer, the PC or the desktop or the laptop to each other on this marketing network over here. These are two different networks on two different floors. If I want to connect the sales network to the marketing network, allowing them the ability to talk to each other, I would need another device that connects two different networks to each other. So just to give you an idea, just to give you a definition of the two devices, if I had to compare the two, these two make up the core of any network that you have. And any network that you have, generally, you're going to have two major devices that exist. One is your switch, which basically allows you the ability to connect devices on the same network. And then you have another device, which is called a router. The functionality of a router over here, it generally is depicted as a circle, is to connect networks to each other. So when you have a LAN, which has different departments connecting to each other, you're generally going to use a switch to connect the different devices on the same network, same department to each other, and that department connecting to another department, which is on a different network, is done through a router. So router will connect them to each other. Now, in terms of a LAN, the LAN will span either a single building with multiple floors on it, maybe a couple of two adjacent buildings in close proximity to each other. Again, connecting them to each other will be done through this device called a router. So I have a router in building 1 connecting 2 floors to each other, and the same router also has a connection to another router in another building connecting the accounting department to each other. Another thing that I'm also depicting over here that you need to be aware of, and we'll do a lot more of that later on, is on this side, on building 1, I have wired connections. So my device that is connecting the different local devices to each other, the computer, the printer to each other, is a switch. At the same time, the accounting department is using Wi-Fi to connect the different devices to each other. As I said, at the center of your network is your either the switch in a wired network and AP, the access point, in a wireless network. But again, when they want to talk to another network, the device that is used to connect up is the router. So the router connects up to the AP that allows this AP to transmit information from this PC, which is in the accounting department, to maybe the server that's in the marketing department in the adjacent building. So that's what a LAN is. So again, to recap, a PAN, a personal area network, is something that happens or exists within your home. LAN is generally inside your building, a bigger scope. It's not just one home. It can span to what? Multiple buildings, although in the same close proximity. The one key factor over here that will distinguish a LAN from the new networks that we'll be adding on in this particular video is who owns this cable. Now, when you have a LAN, the cabling that is done over here is done by the company itself. You don't need an external entity to do the cabling or the connectivity for you. So this cabling generally in a LAN is owned by the company. All right, you write this down. Owned by the company. Whereas the newer networks that I'm going to introduce in the next slide are where the external cabling connecting the different networks to each other is not owned by the company. It's going to be owned by an external company. So what is a LAN again? To recap this, a LAN is basically connecting the devices to each other generally in a single building, multiple floors, or multiple buildings that are close to each other. All right. This is where the original LAN networks came about. This was most probably the first LAN that existed, which is within the building to connect the different devices to each other. And we also learned that the device that connects different networks to each other is a router. All right. So that is a LAN. Now, initially, we connected one floor to another floor, one building to another building, where we relayed the cable connecting the two buildings to each other. Now, companies which had offices in different parts of the city also wanted them to be connected. So when I go from connecting different buildings of the same company to each other to connecting different buildings within the city to each other, where I do not have the ability to connect the different sites to each other because I cannot lay the cables from one part of the city to another, that's where the external entity, generally a type of a company that is known as a service provider, normally your telephone companies come into the picture. So this type of company is referred to as a service provider. The function of the service provider, which is generally your phone companies that have cables already laid out in different parts of the city, I want to connect my sites in different parts of the city, same city, to each other. So in the Los Angeles metropolitan area, I have Hollywood, I have Pasadena, I have Irvine. These are different cities within the Los Angeles metropolitan area. I use the help of AT&T to connect these sites to each other. Again, I would have a router on the edge of these different sites. They might have LANs in a single office or maybe multiple floors, multiple buildings, but then I'm connecting these sites to other sites within the same metropolitan area. This type of network where now I've graduated from just two buildings in the same proximity where I own all the cabling to other offices in the same city to connect these sites to each other. This is known as a MAN. One distinct difference between a LAN and a MAN is the cabling. The connection between the different sites, different buildings, is not done by you, is done by the external entity, in our case AT&T or a service provider. So that's a MAN. And we'll recap that, the differences between a PAN, a LAN, and a MAN in a bit. But at this point, you should know the difference between what a LAN is, what a MAN is, or for that matter, a PAN. The next evolution was when the companies wanted to connect their networks in different parts of the world to each other, different cities now, not the same metropolitan area, but different metropolitan areas. These different areas or different cities to each other. This could be in the same country, it could be in a different country. So again, the cabling I would not own, but I would need the help of what? The service provider to connect me up. So in this example, the scope of my network connecting my sites to each other expands to the rest of the world. So for example, over here I have an office in Los Angeles, another office in New York, another office in London, and I'm connecting my offices to each other by leveraging the services of a service provider like AT&T, Verizon, Vodafone. These are different service providers around the world that will allow you the ability to connect your LANs to each other. And this type of network is known as a wide area network, a WAN. Now, the reason I call it a private WAN is because the sites that I'm connecting over here are my own sites. So I'm connecting my Los Angeles site to my New York site to my London site. So private WAN. Again, it's an extension of your MAN. A MAN would connect the different buildings within the same city to each other. A WAN is a bigger part of it. It will spread across cities, countries, and continents to connect my offices to my offices. So if I have a multinational company that is having offices in different parts of the world, I have the ability to connect them up by using the service provider, by using these devices known as routers that connect them to each other. So that's what a WAN is. Now, a private WAN connects my offices to another office of mine. The other type of WAN that you have is the most popular type of WAN that you have, which is called the internet. Also known as a public WAN. What do I mean by a public WAN? In this type of WAN, I don't have the connection between my site to my site. All the different companies that want to do business with each other, or they want general public to do business with them, they public a certain part of their LAN to the internet. They allow different other companies, consumers, to connect up to their sites so that they can market their services to the general public. Or you can, not just to the general public, you also have them connecting to other sites of other companies. For example, if there's an interbank transfer done for monetary purposes between two financial institutions, that will also use some form of a wide area network to connect two different banks to each other. That is known as a public WAN. What's a public WAN? Basically, it is another WAN using a service provider to connect the different networks to each other, but it is for the purpose of connecting different companies to each other, or connecting the company networks to the individual user so that they can market and sell their services. Now, because they are communicating between different companies, they needed to have some type of standard language or communication mechanism that would allow them the ability to communicate. And that's where a protocol, a communication language had to come about. And that communication language, the de facto standard of communication, is called the Internet Protocol, or IP. So whenever these different WANs are talking to each other, they're communicating, transmitting data to each other, the protocol that is used to communicate is this protocol known as the Internet Protocol, or popularly known as the IP protocol. All right? So the WAN, the public WAN, communicates to each other using this protocol called IP that allows the different companies to talk to each other. A depiction of that is over here in this diagram over here, where I have the internet. Again, they're ISP routers connecting different ISP routers. What I'm showing you guys over here is I have a company A, which has multiple networks over here with a local switch connecting these PCs to each other. I have another segment, another part of the local area network for company A, which has different type of servers available connecting over here to a router of the company that allows this PC to talk to these servers. But not only that, this router is also connected to the service provider. So the service provider will allow the company A resources to be accessed by other users on the internet. Now, what are the other users? It is another company over here, and also your home users, your individual users are over there as well. For example, over here, what I've done to show you that is the service providers are also providing access to your home access point or router, which connects the local devices over here to the internet, allowing them using the routers to connect in and access maybe the web server of this company over here. Same thing applies to this home router, which has a combination of your wireless and wired devices connecting again to the internet and being able to access the different resources for different companies over here available on the internet. Again, so it's a combination of what? Company networks connecting to this common network to share resources with each other, or allowing the individual users to connect to this network of networks known as the internet. This is the public WAN. So again, as I said, there are two types of WANs that you have over here. What are the two types of WANs? One type of WAN is known as the private WAN, which is connecting different sites in different cities of the same company to each other. And then you have the public WAN, which basically is your internet, which allows you the ability to connect different networks of different companies to each other in a global network known as the internet. That's the public WAN. All right. So these are the different type of networks that you have based on the size of a network. Now, to recap that, to take a look at what we just discussed in this video, let's take a look at the key concepts of this particular video. The first thing, home networks are examples of what? As I talked about, the home networks, the smallest network that you have is known as a personal area network, or PAN. All right, this is what you run within your home. The networks that are connected within the same building or buildings in close proximity to each other are called what? LANs. The key factor over here, all the cabling is owned by the company. Cabling, or I would say connections, all the connections owned by the company. All right. Then you have networks that are connected within the same city. Again, the key factor over here, within the same city, but for the same company. If now I'm expanding from where? From my location with multiple sites or multiple small little networks, small buildings, I own all the cables, to other sites within the same metropolitan area, I don't have cabling going across to them. I use a service provider to help me with the connections, but it's in the same metropolitan area. So this is known as your MAN. Key factor again over here is it's different sites of the same company in the same city that are connected, but with the help of the service provider. Bigger area covered than a LAN. Then a bigger area than a MAN is when the networks are used to connect the same company, different sites in different cities or different countries, different continents to each other. This is known as a WAN. Now, as I said, WAN is of two types. When the WANs connect networks belonging to the same company to each other, it's called a private WAN. And when you connect WANs that connect networks belonging to different companies to each other, the example of that is your internet, that is also referred to as a public WAN. So you have a private WAN and you have a public WAN. All right. So these are the key concepts that I want you to have as your takeaways from this particular video. Again, to recap, in this particular video, what I want you guys to know about is the different type of networks that you have, your home network, PAN, your company network within one building or multiple buildings in close proximity to each other, your LAN, connecting different LANs in different parts of the same city to each other, metropolitan area network, MAN. In a MAN, you connect different sites of the same company to each other, but leveraging the connections based on an external company like your service provider to each other. That's your your MAN. When you connect different sites in different cities to each other, which is covering a bigger area, broader area, it's called a wide area network, a WAN, which can be two different cities in the same country, two different cities in different countries, different continents to each other. That's a wide area network. Now there's two different genres of wide area networks as well. When you're connecting the networks of the same company to each other, it's a private WAN. When you're connecting the WANs of different companies to each other, there's one big example of that. That's the internet. It's also called the public WAN. All right. So that's what I want you guys to have as a takeaway from this particular video is that there are four major type of networks and we have discussed them. Hope to see you in the next video.